Welcome to this episode of YouTube, and I do apologize for the delay. It seems like after the Working for Wolves weekend, we just kind of kept on working and haven't had a lot of time to sit at the computer and edit video. We have been busy with building Luna's habitat up a little bit. We have a little bit more concrete work to do. You can kind of see the front of the den still is partially done, but we wanted to give her a safe and comfortable place to get out of the wind, especially as the weather turns. We know that the northwest wind can be pretty formidable here, so we're hauling a lot of rock, trying to give her some vantage points so she can climb. And actually, she's doing quite well physically. We have been working with her pretty much on a daily basis. The only time we're not is if she's got a food possession or she's a little bit too rammy to want some body work, but we are trying to, again, make her feel as comfortable as possible. Our entire purpose is to make sure that her physical needs are met so that we can maybe modify some of her behavioral issues. And so we have talked in the past about seeming to be a little bit on the defensive as maybe a proactive way to avoid too much conflict or too much vulnerability because of that back right leg. But as you can see here, she is physically doing quite well. She has no problem in a squat urination there. She can climb on and off the den. She jumps on and off the den. We actually even opened up her habitat so she can go into the back habitat, which is where Gryzor used to be. And those of you familiar with that, it does have a shared fence line. So we know that physically she was doing okay. And then we have to kind of assess behaviorally. And this is Luna with a beaver. And you can see in the back, Gryzor is walking along the east retired fence line, and you can hear a kind of a slight low-throated growl. So we know that Luna's probably not going to go back in with the exhibit pack because of her vulnerability and because of her response to her vulnerability, but we know that wolves are social and we want to have a social relationship for her and Gryzor. So we've been assessing physically to make sure that she's capable of dealing with Gryzor, who's 120 some pounds. But behaviorally, for Gryzor's sake, we wanted to make sure that Luna's focus and her defensive behavior was somewhat under control. So we've been really taking our time. It was 3 months on November 7th that Luna had been out of the pack, and we certainly know that winter's coming, and we want to make sure that we can do some work prior to the winter dominance. So today we brought Gryzor into the pack holding area. Let him explore, which we did earlier in a webinar, so it's not the first time he's been in here, but again, these high vantage points, wolves like to climb up and search or look for things in the horizon, things that are of stimulus, and so Gryzor got a chance to kind of explore a little bit. We kept Luna in the vestibule. We had the Wolf Care Center door open so she could come and go out of there. She could walk the shared fence line. She definitely was interested in what Gryzor was looking at, and she did a little bit of lunge there. So after not really too long, we wanted to make sure she wasn't getting too excited about it, so we did allow her to come out, and this is their first face-to-face meeting. And Luna does a little bit of a standoff there. Gryzor does a standoff where the ear is pricked and turned sideways, but no hackles and no high tail response. And then Luna comes over and does a chin rest. And Gryzor, I'm not sure what he thinks about that. And he tries to move a little bit, and she does a little bit more active chin rest. And he, again, doesn't respond with any aggressive tendencies. He just kind of retreats a little bit. And then it was like watching two magnets where Luna went, Gryzor was the opposite side. And so we then saw Gryzor wanting to go see Tina, who was outside the enclosure. And then he proceeded to go back into the Wolf Care Center. So Tina was there pretty much to help us gauge how, I guess, serious the intensity or how intense the things were. Tina is a very good judge of the tension. So if she senses tension, she barks or she gets excited. And so Tina's just lying right outside the gate and really showed no concern whatsoever for Luna or Gryzor. So then I brought in the next test was to see how they would eat with kibble. Kibble's a favorite around here. I think they like the salt or the taste of it, but they don't get it very often. And so I was going to try to see how they were, if I could manage to feed both of them. I do that a lot with the exhibit pack to look at compatibility. And we did see Luna be a little bit possessive about the kibble. So Gryzor just kind of went about his business. He's got Tina on the back side of the vestibule. He can go in the wolf care center. You know, he was a little bit indifferent to Luna's behavior. He came back to the front of the wolf yard. Probably his favorite thing to do was watch people come and go out of the wolf yard. But again, like I say, he was very, very willing to go into the wolf care center. And so we ended it on a positive note. Gryzor willingly walked back to the east side. Luna, again, we will continue to work with her and try to make sure that that response is good for Gryzor. And again, we got to watch Gryzor. He's 12 and a half. You know, he's certainly a little bit more intimidated by wind and by sights and sounds and construction and things. Luna has really no concern about any of the construction that's going on or any of the work that we're doing right now. We're building a security fence and a winter storage that'll block off view of Gryzor. So we want to make sure that Gryzor is well protected back there. And that's causing Gryzor a little bit of anxiety. You might see a little more pacing on the webcam until we get this project done. He's going to have a little bit of anxiety with that. So our goal is to try to, get him together with Luna so maybe he can be distracted a little bit and take some of that, again, anxiety away for him and give them all more space. They would have 3 areas that they could utilize. So then over in exhibit, the wind, again, the fall winds are moving things around. The pups are always stimulated in things like rolling birch bark and, whatever moves, the pups are on it. And so Grayson on the right there with the birch bark, he, again, has that darker saddle, a little bit shorter nose. Axel is a little bit more kind of yellowish or kind of a tawny coloration on his pelage. Axel's got I think a longer face that makes it look more triangular to be able to tell them apart. But the reality is there's times we can't tell them apart unless we are interacting with them. Axel does have his characteristic side of behavior where he tends to get into more things. When he greets, he tends to snap and jump and grab, whereas Grayson is a much more calm and certainly more respectful pup when it comes to interacting. They're dealing with Denali, okay. Grayson was the one who had a little bit of issues with Denali. You see here, just relaxed. Denali's feeding on some frozen liver, and Grayson's standing there with his tail fairly relaxed. We do see a little bit of issues sometimes late in the evening, or sometimes when the pack gets excited, that they might be running and jumping, and especially on the dens or the pump housing, where maybe Grayson gets a little intimidated because there's a lot of activity, and especially if Bolts or Denali focuses on him. But what we are seeing is that Aiden is very quick to put an end to too much roughhousing. And I don't know if that's necessarily Aiden protecting the pups or Aiden just kind of trying to control those 2 subordinate males so that they aren't gaining too much status. So in this clip, actually, it's Axel who's getting chased and not Grayson. But here comes Aiden down the hill. He's coming into the den and circling around and kind of going after Denali. And Bolts is along there, and that's Axel just running into the den. So sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the activities. So one thing we are seeing is a lot of activity. This pack always seems to be engaged in things. Of course, they have their natural downtime during the middle of the day, but usually now around 3 or 4 o'clock they get up and they start moving around and start interacting. And so there may be short periods of time where Grayson's a little bit of the focus, but it is kind of controlled, like I said, by Aiden. And Aiden's got a little bit of work to do. Bolts has been testing a little bit, but Aiden's very, very strong, and he's keeping Bolts under control. And as a matter of fact, if we look at this, Bolts is starting to do a little bit more posturing over the pups. So Aiden's a great pack leader and playing the role of kind of nurturing of the pups as well as setting some limits and also kind of controlling the dynamics of the pack. And so that's been what we've been experiencing. Very, very calm. Really no issues coming into the winter. Of course, we haven't really had winter. We've had temperatures in the 50s and 60s for November, and so this is the first kind of week where we've had some 20-degree morning temperatures. So here's Grayson coming up to Aiden and interacting. So I'm going to leave you with a Luna howling clip. Enjoy, and we'll see you again.